needs to be said, our presenter will say that when she gets said, but I just want to add quickly that she's also, if you don't know, the daughter of
All right, good evening, everybody. Okay, so looking at the agenda for this evening, right? So we're going to talk about anxiety. What is anxiety? Also, how do we differentiate between anxiety and stress? We look at some myths and facts. How are you currently feeling? What are you hoping to leave with this evening? So setting your own intentions for this evening, and I prefer to begin that way so that when we do have time for questions, if there's anything I did not address, you can always bring it up during that time. There is so much to anxiety. So this evening we'll only be scratching the surface, okay? So I mentioned to Pastor Dixon that I'm more than willing to return and to do some more presentations. So this evening we'll be doing a general overview of anxiety and some techniques to help manage anxiety. So for a minute or two, I want you, everybody in here, I want you all and those watching online to visualize in detail a scene that brings a sense of calm, a scene that helps you to feel peaceful, to feel relaxed. So I'm going to give you a minute to just visualize in detail what that scene looks like. For me, there's always water. I love being around water. I love hearing water. What scene comes to mind when you think about what helps you to feel relaxed and what helps you to feel peaceful? Okay, so the reason I'm asking you to visualize this scene, as we go through the material this evening, some of it can be very triggering, okay? So some of you may be experiencing some of the things that I will be discussing, or you know someone who is currently struggling with anxiety. And so whenever you find yourself, maybe your anxiety starts to increase, or you start to feel agitated, you can always pause and visualize that scene that just came up for you. Okay? So let's begin by taking a look at stress. I think we often use the term stress to describe negative experiences or negative situations, which lead many people to think that stress is always bad. But that is not always true. Stress can be beneficial and it can be detrimental. It's important to understand the different types of stress so that you're better able to manage them when you do encounter it. So the two main types of stress that we'll be taking a look at this evening, it's eustress and distress. How many of you have heard of eustress? I know before I got in this field, I'd never heard of it either. We usually hear about distress, but eustress is a positive form of stress, and it can lead to better performance, increased motivation. It can lead to overall an improved feeling of emotional well-being as well. Eustress is typically short-term though. It feels exciting and we're still able to cope with it. So some examples of eustress would be traveling. For me, that's my example. So traveling can be very stressful, but at the end it's ultimately enjoyable, it's rewarding, okay? Another example of eustress, you got a promotion for a job that you've been wanting for a long time. And that may initially come with a lot of stress. Getting married, which is a good thing, but it can also come with stress. So these are examples of eustress. And then we have on the flip side of that, distress, which feels very overwhelming, but the difference is it's long-term. So you're constantly feeling those stressful sensations. It's also beyond your capabilities to cope. So some examples of distress would be bullying, especially for children, a relationship in distress, a relationship that is ending, death of a loved one, so a lot of grief can also bring about a distress. Okay. Controlling or very manipulative behavior, and you've been enduring that for a while. So these are examples of distress. Now, why is it important to understand the difference? If we do not manage distress, it can lead to a host of other conditions, including anxiety and depression. But look at some other conditions that distress can cause if it's unmanaged. Heart disease, high blood pressure, ulcers, digestive disorders. A lot of people who struggle with anxiety also have stomach or digestive issues. And chronic pain. I can't tell you how many times clients have come to me because they're experiencing, they're experiencing chronic pain. So they complain about the backaches that are not going away, neck aches, shoulder pain, and they move from one doctor to the next. They move from one doctor to the next, getting a whole range of different tests done, but the tests all come back normal. And then they come to me, and with my help, we're able to uncover some stressors that they're experiencing, process that. I would give them some coping skills and tools to help manage, and then the pain begins to go away. So unmanaged stress can also cause a host of different pains. And in our society, I often hear, I'm getting old, that's why I have all those aches and pains, which is sometimes true, but sometimes there as a result of stressful situations. So, what is anxiety? I want to start by normalizing, for those of you who may be experiencing symptoms of anxiety, it is the most common mental health condition. Okay? There are so many individuals who struggle with anxiety at various levels. And ever since COVID, we've seen a spike in the number of individuals with anxiety as well. So anxiety is a normal reaction to danger. It's your body sensing a threat and preparing you to either fight or to run away. So sometimes it is totally normal and totally okay to experience the anxiety. So you have an exam coming up, you feel a little bit of anxiety, but once the exam is over, the anxiety goes away. You have a job interview, you have to speak in front of a large number of people. That always induces a certain level of anxiety. It becomes pathological when the stressor is over, but the anxiety is still there. Okay? So in moderation, it helps to motivate you to action and to solve problems. When it begins to interfere with your daily life, so if you're a student, it's starting to affect your academic performance. If you're working, it's affecting your performance on the job. These are the indicators that we need to look for that tell us that, hey, this is not just normal anxiety, it's something that I need to pay attention to. So when is it a mental health problem? As I said, it is very strong, it lasts for a very long time. You begin to avoid situations that might cause you to feel anxious, okay? So if you do not like being in large crowds or being around lots of people, you would find that you stop going to church, okay? You stop hanging out with your friends, instead preferring to remain at home. The worries and the fears are very distressing and they're hard to control. Some individuals also experience panic attacks, and we'll talk about panic attacks in a bit. And you just find it hard to go about your everyday life or do things you enjoy. I like to use real-life examples. So these are some descriptions from individuals who struggle with anxiety. You know that feeling when you're rocking on the back legs of your chair, and suddenly for a split second you think you're about to fall? That feeling in your chest when you think you're about to fall? Imagine that split second feeling being frozen in time and lodged in your chest for hours or days. And imagine with it, you also have that sense of dread that sticks around. And sometimes you don't even know why you're experiencing those feelings. Here's another description. Going out of the house is a challenge because I have a fear of panicking and feel that I'm being watched or judged. It's just horrible. I want to get help, but I'm afraid of being judged. Another one, for me, anxiety feels as if everyone in the world is waiting for me to trip up so that they can laugh at me. It makes me feel nervous and unsure whether the next step I take is the best way forward. So let's quickly take a look at some myths versus facts. So the first myth that I hear a lot in the Christian community, if someone struggles with anxiety or depression, it means that they don't have faith in God, or their faith is weak, or they're not praying enough, right? That is actually a myth. So if we look at the Bible, it's filled with people who knew and loved God and were close to God, but they still wrestled with anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. So what we learn from the Bible is that fear, anxiety, and Distressing emotions are a part of the normal human experience. We can have hope for the future, we can have faith in God, and still the current pain, the sorrow, the discomfort that we're feeling may not necessarily automatically go away. And we have several examples. So if you look at 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 3 to 4, and many of you are familiar with Elijah, and he prayed for death, saying, "This is enough, O Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers." And then we have Job, in Job 7, "I despise my life. I would not live forever. Let me alone. My days have no meaning." Jonah, "It would be better for me to die than to live." And when God asked him if it's right to be so angry, he responded, "It is. And I'm so angry, I wish I were dead." David, we're all familiar with David as well. So David experienced feelings of depression and hopelessness. And in Psalm 6, "I am worn out from my groaning. All night long I flood my bed with weeping and drench my couch with tears." Hannah, and Hannah is a woman who knows grief. She longed for a baby but was unable to. And in 1 Samuel chapter 1 and verse 10, we see in her deep anguish, she prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. So I wanted to start off with that, to just normalize and to get that myth out there that if we have faith in God, that we should not experience those things, okay? Another myth, anxiety is just overreacting. It's a serious medical condition involving more than just temporary worry or fear. So if you think about someone with cancer, or let's start with someone with a broken leg or a broken arm, you can see the cast. These individuals get a lot of empathy, a lot of sympathy, right? You should rest, take it easy. But someone with a mental health condition, why you still cannot get over that, right? Why are you laying in bed? You need to get up and be productive. We would never say those things to someone with cancer and really struggling. Some individuals need medication, and a lot of clients come into me and the parents, family members don't understand why they need medication. Some family members throw away their medication. We would not do that to someone with diabetes, right? We would not ask someone with cancer to not undergo chemotherapy or any form of treatment. So it's a serious medical condition, even though sometimes we can't see it. We can't see that the person is struggling. There's also high performance anxiety where individuals, they can go to work, they can go to school, they come to church, get everything done, but when they get home, they crumble, okay? So we never know what somebody is going through. Anxiety disorders involve real changes in brain function. And as a matter of fact, when I work with clients with anxiety, one of the main things that I do is rewiring the brain. So when you take a look at, and it's out there, you can research it, you can find it online. When you look at images, brain images of individuals who struggle with anxiety and those who do not, there are various parts of the brain, such as the amygdala, that is way bigger in those with anxiety, okay? So the brain is actually very different. And that is why individuals cannot snap out of it or just get over it. It has to take rewiring of the brain. Only weak people get anxious. Anxiety does not discriminate. So regardless of your strength, your character, your background, how much money you have, the car that you drive, anxiety does not discriminate. So we have several different reasons and causes of anxiety. Anxiety will go away on its own. Most individuals need treatment because if they do not receive treatment, it can persist and it even gets worse over time. Medication is the only effective treatment. Not true. As a matter of fact, in my practice, medication is never the first choice. However, there are some individuals who do need it, even if it's temporarily. So psychotherapy, different lifestyle changes, and I'll talk about some of those later on, can also help. I like to take a holistic approach. So yes, my clients come into me for therapy, but I also encourage different lifestyle changes to go along with the therapy. Talking about anxiety makes it worse. Not true. Discussing it can foster understanding and support. Those social interactions can also assist individuals struggling with anxiety. So we are not wired for isolation. We're wired for connection, okay? And so isolation breeds further anxiety and further depression. When I think about a lot of the clients that I work with, especially in the Caribbean, we were socialized from very early on. If the emotion is not joy or happiness, you suck it up, right? You were not allowed to cry many times. You were not allowed to be angry. So if a child is crying because you took away a toy, a child is crying because mommy's leaving for work and they're sad, we hear certain things like, you want me to give you something to cry about? Stop crying. We shut that down immediately. And so very early on, we learned that it's not safe for us to show anything but joy and happiness. Now, as you can imagine, there are real dangers with that because individuals learn, I do not have any safe spaces to talk about how I really feel if it's not joy, excitement, or any of the others. That leads to numbing of the emotions. And how do people numb? They begin to numb with alcohol, right? So whereas they would take a glass of wine every now and again, now they need a glass of wine every evening, especially after getting work, to calm down. So they numb with alcohol, some numb with drugs, some numb with sex, some numb with shopping. So there are various different ways that individuals may try to cope. But as you can imagine, numbing does not resolve the issue. And it only continues to brew inside of you, and then eventually it explodes. So you ever notice somebody explodes and you're like, that's what you're reacting that way for? Usually it's something that has been building and building, and after a while the body cannot hold it anymore, and so the individual explodes. Suppressing and numbing those emotions can also lead to the chronic pain and some of the other things that I've already discussed. Christians struggle with anxiety because God is punishing them. Unfortunately, this is one that I've heard, and it literally, I think I felt my heart breaking when I heard that, because it was an individual who was part of a very popular Christian community who was struggling with anxiety, and a lot of parishioners had said that God was punishing him for certain things. As far as I know, we are all sinners, right? We all fall short, and using statements like this can be so minimizing, it can be so harmful, and want to ensure that everybody who is hearing me this evening does not fall prey to these types of statements. So why is it important to know about those myths? I want to help change the narrative around mental health and mental illness, because if these persist, then it prevents individuals from seeking help. I also see clients in the US, And I see a lot of clients from the Caribbean who live in the US. And you know how many of them tell me seeking counseling is worse than the anxiety that they experience because they're so fearful of people finding out that they're going to see a counselor. So it actually worsens their condition. It can also lead to increased isolation because they feel misunderstood. They don't have those safe spaces to go to, and so they withdraw. It also encourages self-blame. Well, maybe yes, maybe I need to pray more. I thought my prayer life was healthy, but maybe it's something to do with me. Maybe my faith is not where it should be. So it exacerbates those feelings of guilt and shame. So, what are some symptoms of anxiety? Are you currently tense, worried, or on edge? Do you believe that something bad will happen if certain things aren't done a certain way? Do you feel like danger and catastrophe are around every corner? Does your anxiety interfere with your work, school, or family responsibilities? Do you avoid everyday situations or activities because they cause you anxiety? Are you plagued by fears that you know are irrational, but you just can't shake it? Do you experience sudden, unexpected attacks of heart-pounding panic? If you do, or you know somebody who does, you're not alone. Like I said, it's the most common mental health issue, but what I find really exciting is that it's highly treatable. Individuals do not have to continue to go through life with those symptoms of anxiety. I'll skip these. Okay, so we have normal anxiety and we have pathological anxiety. We spoke about some normal ones: getting married, a new job, moving to a new home. All of these are normal. It becomes pathological when you can't shake it and it continues to intensify even after the stressor is over. So you have some symptoms: worry, apprehension, inability to concentrate, feeling very restless all the time, feelings of fear, panic, or dread, and sometimes you can't tell, why do I feel like something bad is about to happen? I had one client share with me that it feels like a dark cloud was just following her everywhere that she went. The fears and the anxiety are out of proportion to whatever the situation is. Okay? Those with anxiety disorders also struggle with other mental health conditions, and it could be depression, it could be eating disorders, it could be ADHD. Women are twice as likely to be affected as men, and major depression is one of the most, the common co-occurring disorders. Children can also experience anxiety. So sometimes the parents come to me, what does he have to be anxious about? You don't pay no bills. All you do is you just have to go to school, do your work, come home. Why? What do you have to be anxious about? Remember, I just spoke about sometimes and many times, it's the brain structure causing the anxiety. So children experience anxiety as well. Some causes: genetics. When you look at studies of twins and families, you see a lot of commonality there. Stressful or traumatic past events can also cause it. Learned behavior. So for instance, if you grew up and you saw your mom or your dad was always terrified of cockroaches. So every time a cockroach was nearby, you saw him or her run or do anything to get away from it. Children can automatically begin to have that very same fear. So there's learned behavior as well. If you grew up in an environment where you saw or you had parents who were always anxious and always fearful, there's a high likelihood that you can also develop that anxious behavior. Physical conditions can also cause it, and stressful life circumstances. And as I said earlier, I like normalizing things for individuals. So I think all of you are aware that my mom passed away. I still say recently because it still feels like yesterday. And I have had to work with my own counselor to deal with my grief and my bereavement. Okay? So these are normal parts of the human experience. And when we deny it, is when we don't have those opportunities to treat what we're experiencing. So let's quickly look at some physiological symptoms. So the heart racing, some people have diarrhea. So for some people, when they become really stressed, they have those digestive or stomach issues. Dizziness, so feeling dizzy all of a sudden, and feeling your chest very tight. All of those are examples of physiological symptoms. Emotional symptoms, the dread we spoke about, but not being able to concentrate, feeling tense and jumpy, always anticipating the worst. So these are the individuals, no matter what is going on, they automatically think of the worst possible outcome. Irritability, restlessness, watching for signs of danger, and also feeling like your mind has gone blank. Some physical symptoms, the heart pounding, the sweaty palms. Some individuals describe a tingling all over the face as well. Frequent urination, so you have to go to the restroom often when the anxiety is high. Shortness of breath. I've had a lot of individuals go to the hospital, the emergency room, because they thought they were having a heart attack when it was increased anxiety. Muscle tension, headaches, fatigue, and difficulty sleeping, insomnia. Some anxious thoughts, believing the worst will happen, persistent worry, all or nothing thinking, that's black or white. So it's either good or it's bad. There's no in between, okay? So I got an F on one exam. I would automatically think, okay, I'm doomed. I'm not going to be able to graduate successfully because of that one F, okay? A friend said they would call you at 7 p.m. It's now 9 p.m. Oh, she must not want to be my friend anymore. Oh, I hope she did not get into an accident. So thinking the worst and then ignoring that there are other possibilities as well are common traits of those who struggle with anxiety. Anxious behaviors, so avoidance of the situation or events. So some individuals are terrified of driving on bridges, for instance, okay? And so they may avoid driving on the bridge, even though if they were to drive on the bridge, it would take them 5 minutes to get to work. They would go the other route, which would take them about 30 minutes, okay? That is when you know it needs to be addressed. Constantly seeking assurance, so always second-guessing and doubting themselves. Irritability and frustration in feared situations. And compulsive actions, which is another common anxiety disorder. It's called OCD. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. So for instance, I have a client who was raped, so sexually abused. And as a result, she always felt very unclean. And so the compulsive action was she would take 2 or 3 hour long showers, just trying to feel clean because of the rape that she endured. So panic attacks, and this is where it feels like a heart attack. Overwhelming anxiety and fear. And I want to also point out that Sometimes and most times, those panic attacks come from nowhere. You may simply be going about your day and then suddenly begin to feel your heart pounding. Feeling dizzy, a lot of people have to sit and pause what they're doing because they feel like they're dying, they feel like going crazy. So imagine this lasting a minute. It can also last several hours. Very terrifying. So again, this can happen when you do not pay attention to the stressors that you're experiencing. So they begin to build up over time, and then you may begin to experience panic attacks. So these are some other examples of symptoms that come along with panic disorder. Agoraphobia is another type of anxiety disorder where you begin to avoid certain places because you fear, what if I have a panic attack and I'm not able to get out, to escape, or to get help? So a common example, some individuals are terrified of being in closed spaces. And so they may avoid using elevators because what if the elevator breaks down and nobody can come in to get me out and to get me help? Going. So causes of panic attacks, major life transition, severe stress, and we have several medical conditions, which I won't get into, but hypothyroidism. Whenever a client comes with symptoms of anxiety, I always ask, when was the last time you had a medical checkup? Because I want to ensure the thyroid is okay and certain other areas are okay. So if you have an overactive thyroid, meaning it's producing large amounts or too much of the thyroid hormone, it can also lead to panic attacks. If you have hypoglycemia, meaning your blood sugar dips below what is healthy for you, it can also incite panic attacks, okay? So it's always a good idea to begin with your medical doctors to rule out that there isn't something else going on. Managing stress and anxiety, I think the first point is to recognize what are my warning signs that tell me that I am feeling stressed and I need to pay attention. So for some people, it could be they just begin to feel really irritable. For some people, it begins to affect their sleep because they're overthinking so much that the brain is not able to relax. And so it begins to affect their sleep. Some people notice through their eating patterns. Some people begin to eat more than typical, and some people lose their appetite. So what are your warning signs that tell you, I need to hit the pause button and take care of myself? So lightening your load. I think a lot of us have this syndrome where we want to do everything ourselves. And that is not always the best way to go. So what can you delegate? What can you take off your plate? Practice relaxation techniques. So exercise, I think, is one of the most underrated forms of reducing anxiety and depression. So how often do you exercise? And it can simply be going for a walk 2 or 3 times a week for about 30 minutes. But it helps to calm the nervous system and it helps to reduce stress and anxiety. Caring for your body, sufficient sleep. Most of us need about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Are you one of those you would sleep for 8 hours and wake up and you still feel tired? And that means you're not getting restorative sleep. Your brain may still be overactive, okay? Caffeine, if you're one of those who loves to drink coffee or other things with caffeine, this can also spike your anxiety. So limiting the amount of caffeine that you intake. Alcohol and nicotine as well. What does your social your social circle look like? Are you always alone? Are you always isolated? These things can trigger or they worsen anxiety. But you want to ensure that your people are safe people. Because if you're hanging around people who are constantly minimizing what you're going through, then that will only lead to worsened anxiety. So, who are your safe people? And how often do you socialize? Journaling, for those of you who like writing, journaling helps to reduce symptoms of anxiety. So just writing what you're feeling, how you're feeling, what happened throughout the day. And sometimes we can begin to see patterns. Well, my anxiety was really high on Monday and Thursday, and I noticed on Monday and Thursday, these two things happened. And you can start to make correlations. So journaling is something that I enjoy as well. Mindfulness activities, and there are several mindfulness activities that you can do. Adult coloring is one I've introduced to a lot of my clients, and many of them enjoy that. Meditation, listening to music. Mindfulness simply means coming back to the present. So it's impossible to be anxious and present at the same time. So what are some things that will bring me back to the present moment instead of worrying about things that haven't happened, worrying about the future? So listening to music and finding things that work for you, because what may work for one person may not work for another, such as journaling, right? So finding those things that help you to relax and help you to come back into the present. Squeezing and then releasing different muscle parts can also assist with reducing anxiety. And you can start from your feet and come all the way up. You just tense and then release, okay? Something that I had to do, I began doing it a couple of years ago, and it took me waking up in an ambulance to really get it. And so that's why I'm so passionate about getting the word out there so you don't have to get to where I was. And I used to struggle with chronic migraines. And one of the things I noticed was I was going throughout my day constantly tense. Like if you just set an alarm like I did at several points throughout the day and just relax your shoulders and clench your jaw, you notice how tense you typically are throughout your day and you don't even know it because you've been doing it for so long. So finding those different ways to help you release the tension within your body, massages for those who enjoy massages, and you can self-massage as well. Limiting social media use, I find that that can induce a lot of anxiety. Breath work is one of my favorites because you can do it anywhere. Nobody has to know you're doing it. So last week or the week before, I had dental surgery. I do not enjoy going to the dentist. My anxiety always spikes. Breath work is something that I did in those moments to assist with reducing my anxiety. And it's simply inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. And I'll go through one with you before we end today. Visualizing that peaceful scene like I asked you to do, listening to music, cold therapy. So if you with someone or you yourself, you're experiencing really high levels of anxiety and panic attacks, one of the things that you can do if you're at home, you grab some ice and you just hold on to the ice for a few minutes. And what it does is it's a short-term solution, but it immediately calms you and takes you out of that panic, okay? If you're not home, you're out and about, find a restroom and just splash cold water on your face, and it also helps to reduce anxiety. For those of you who are into skincare like I am, you know those rollers that you can use on your face? I keep one in the freezer So whenever my anxiety, I feel like it's not where it should be, I use the cold roller on my face to help reduce the anxiety as well. It's good for headaches as well. So cold therapy helps. Sour candy, for a lot of my kiddies, I have them use sour candy because it helps to reduce the anxiety as well, especially if they have a big exam coming up, the anxiety is high, they carry the sour candy with them. So the deep breathing. So here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to assist your loved ones, your friends with doing as well. So sitting comfortably with your back straight, you put one hand on your chest and the other on your stomach. Now this is just initially. Once you get the hang of it, you don't have to use your hands anymore, okay? So you breathe in through your nose. Excuse me. When you breathe in through your nose, the hand on your stomach. So the hand on your stomach should rise. So think of you blowing a balloon and you should see your stomach rising. If the hand on your chest is rising higher than the one on your stomach, you're breathing too shallow. So this one should rise higher, okay? And we'll do it together in a little bit. And you exhale through your mouth, pushing out as much air as you can while contracting your abdominal muscles. Okay? Like I said, the hand on your stomach should move in as you exhale. Continue to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, and you do that several times. My clients with anxiety, I have them do this first thing in the morning. They set an alarm at some point throughout the day, and then last thing at night. You're laying in the bed, you're about to go to sleep, you take a couple deep breaths. Now, if you struggle with high anxiety, the deep breathing technique that works really well is to breathe in for 4, so you count for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you exhale through your mouth for 8. So it's a very slow and long exhale, and it calms the nervous system. So self-care, what does your self-care look like? And many people, and I used to be guilty of it, I don't have time. We have to make time. When I began prioritizing self-care, just as I put meetings and everything else in my calendar, I would put self-care in the calendar as well. If you think about those things that really rejuvenate you, how often do you do those things? Or are you stuck in a routine where it's work, 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 go home, more work, go to bed, get up the next morning, and it's the same pattern? When are you rejuvenating? When are you finding those moments to relax? So self-care isn't selfish. I think a lot of people were socialized to think you have to be busy all the time. A client shared with me once that if she was at home, she was fine, but once she heard her parents' vehicle pulled up in the garage, she would quickly get up and try to find things to do, because relaxing was seen as laziness. We are not robots, and even robots crash sometimes. So finding a self-care routine, okay? Taking time out, eating well-balanced meals, limiting alcohol and caffeine, getting enough sleep, exercise, your glimmers. Everybody knows what a trigger is. A trigger sets you off, makes you angry. A glimmer is the exact opposite. So a glimmer helps you to feel calm and relaxed. So for me, some of my glimmers are watching the sunset, being around water, being in nature, being with my family, right? So finding out what are your glimmers, and then how often are you practicing those glimmers. Another grounding technique that I love, and you can do it, like deep breathing, and nobody knows that you're doing it. You can keep going. Go again. Thank you. So you're using all 5 of your senses. So you start, what are 5 things I can see? So you simply, wherever you are, look around the room. What are 5 things I can see? And you name those things to yourself. What are 4 things you can feel? What are 3 things you can hear? 2 things you can smell? 1 thing you can taste. So remember earlier I said it's impossible to be anxious and present at the same time. So this activity brings you back into the present by just looking around the room and seeing what's there, what are you hearing, what are you smelling, using all of your senses. Another variation to that I use as well is I would choose a color and I would name all the things in that room with that color, or choose a letter and what are the things that begin with that letter. But whatever you decide to use, it disrupts that anxiety spiral. Okay? So here are some things that hurt. Suck it up, snap out of it. Somebody shares something with you and you say, just so. Be strong, it implies that they're being weak. No use crying over spilled milk. You're a sissy. You're weak. You have no faith in God. Keep it a secret. Don't worry, it will work out. And these are things that I hear. God is punishing the individual. It's all in your head. I can't believe you're getting upset over such a small thing. It's not that big of a deal. Just relax. Others have it worse. We say that all the time. And I tell, clients and people I speak with, it's not the suffering Olympics. Others may have it worse, but then what you're going through is valid as well. You just need to pray, and we need to pray, but we also need to take other measures to take care of ourselves. You need to stop talking about it and be strong. So instead of those, here are some useful strategies that you can use. I'm here if you'd like to talk about what's on your mind. Or I see you're feeling anxious. What can I do to help right now? Provide validation. You don't need to understand what they're going through. Keep going. Keep going. Right. So you don't need to understand what they're going through. Because sometimes if you haven't experienced it yourself, it's difficult to understand. But you can still be supportive. Okay? It is okay to not be okay. We're all human. Express concern. Hey, I noticed that I haven't seen you at church for a while. Right? Just inquiring about what's going on. Offer consistent emotional support and understanding, and listen non-judgmentally. Okay? So paying attention, showing that you care, offering practical help, and all those things that we would do for an individual who had a physical illness. We would offer to take them to the doctor's appointments. We would offer to go buy them their groceries, come home and help them at home, cook a meal. All of those things we would do for physical illnesses, we can also do to support individuals who are struggling with anxiety or others with mental health conditions. Give reassurance and information, so don't blame them for their illness, but reminding them that recovery is possible. Encourage appropriate professional help. All those things that I spoke about before, the relaxation, the meditation, the exercise, if they're doing those things and still struggling, then definitely encourage professional help. If you are in the same place as someone who's having a panic attack, that can seem very frightening, but here are some things that you can do to help the individual. First, as much as possible, you try to stay calm. If you get agitated, then it can also transfer to them. Let them know that you think they're having a panic attack and you're there for them. Encourage them to breathe slowly and deeply. In for 4 and out for 8. Stamping their feet if they're able to, it also assists with reducing the anxiety. Sitting quietly and focusing on their breath. I know a couple years ago we used to ask individuals to breathe in a paper bag when they're hyperventilating, but now we know that this doesn't necessarily help because what happens is the sharp increase in carbon dioxide can also incite more panic attacks. Also, it can be dangerous for individuals with asthma. Because you're breathing in a bag, you don't have a lot of fresh air, and so the oxygen levels can drop significantly, and that can be harmful for those with heart conditions. Okay? So we don't want to breathe in a bag, we just want to take those slow, measured breaths that I spoke about. So, from individuals who struggle with anxiety, here's what they said meant to them the most. What helps me is calmness, acceptance, not trying to dispel it with rational or logical arguments. Be kind, be non-judgmental. Let us know it will pass. Let us know you are there. As I said earlier, the anxiety and the panic attacks, they never last for days and days. They always go away. So reminding them that this is going to pass as well. Reminding me to breathe, asking what I need. It's another common statement that I hear. Crisis resources for yourself, for those who may be struggling with panic attacks and high anxiety. In St. Lucia, we have a 24-hour hotline. Not sure if many of you know about it, but if you dial 203, there are confidential services. You can speak to someone about what you're experiencing. The St. Lucia Crisis Center is also available, and they offer free counseling services as well. They also do virtual counseling. So if you don't necessarily want to go in, they can offer counseling services online. Dialing 911 and going to the nearest emergency room and contacting a licensed mental health professional. Okay? So in my practice, as Pastor Dixon spoke about, I specialize in working with anxiety, depression, and trauma, and so that is an option for those of you who may be seeking some options. Before we end, though, I'd like us to together practice the deep breathing. Now, when you are engaging in deep breathing, for many individuals, they do it with their eyes closed. But for some individuals, closing their eyes can be triggering. So if you're supporting someone and asking them to do deep breathing, you leave the option open. How do you feel most comfortable, with your eyes open or closed? Okay? So if everybody or those who feel comfortable and want to practice it, one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach with your eyes open or closed. I want you to be comfortable. If your legs are crossed, uncross your legs. And we're going to inhale for 4, okay? And I'll count with you. So inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. And exhale through your mouth, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's do 2 more. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. And exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. okay? And you can do that. Once you get the hang of it, you don't have to use your hands anymore, okay? So once you get the hang of what does my stomach feel like if I'm blowing it like a balloon, then you don't have to use your hands. Like I said, you can practice this anywhere, whenever you feel your anxiety is increasing, or if you're experiencing a panic attack or someone close to you is, you can invite them to do this. I think it's also important to mention that you don't only want to practice deep breathing when the anxiety is high. You want to make it a regular practice if you notice that you tend to struggle with anxiety. And so just as I do with my clients, at the first thing in the morning, sometime throughout your day, and last thing at night, you do about 3 to 5 of those. If you need to do more than 5, that's fine as well, okay? So that is one mindfulness activity that you can practice. Like I said, there are many other relaxation activities. Find what works for you. I have individuals who would say things like, I enjoy playing football, but I don't know when last I played football. I enjoy listening to music. I don't know when last I did that. I haven't hung out with my friends in a while. So finding those things that rejuvenate you and that help you to feel relaxed, and practicing, prioritizing those things into your schedule. All right, thank you very much. We'll take questions now. If anybody has any questions. Okay. I hope this was helpful, and I've given you some tools. Okay. Um, I hope I've given you some tools to assist with your initial response to reducing stress and anxiety.
Testing. Testing. I'm just preparing a microphone to take around to ask questions because I'm very sure that there are people with questions and they're probably just waiting for somebody to start off first. I would hate to think after a lecture like this that we have absolutely no questions, even clarification on something that was said. So just preparing a microphone. Whatever you have on your mind, anything that you're not clear with, before Dr. Greenidge leaves, please feel free to ask. Is there anybody with a question?
Good night, everybody. You mentioned about the ice. You mentioned holding the ice. I was told using a bottle of ice under your feet, like rolling, would also work.
Yes.
I also want to find out whether eating the ice is also.
That's an excellent question. Yes, so eating the ice will also assist. Um, are you eating ice right now? Okay. Yes, so eating ice will also assist. But I would say, in addition to eating the ice, if you can just also hold it in some external extremity, would also give you the double benefit. Okay? Yes, but rolling it under your feet, any type of cold therapy will help. Taking a really cold shower, if your doctor has not said that this is something you should avoid, then it helps as well.
Pleasant good night to everybody.
Good night.
Persons may think that I was not here, but I was online, and I really want to thank Pastor for this. Sports. has played a pivotal role in I dealing with my stress.
Good.
And I was happy you highlighted sports. Now, for me, karate has always been my thing. Punching a bag and thinking of the person that I want to beat. That helps me calm down. I know it's not extreme, but that is what calms me down. I want to hear your opinion on this because sometimes I may want to lash out and I might not do it based on my belief and based on the way I would want to put licks on that person. But that calms me down. Am I wrong to think that, or is it a good method?
Yes, thank you so much for your question. So absolutely not. You're not wrong to think that. It works for a lot of people. So, sorry, I forgot we were streaming. Yes, it works for a lot of people. I remember earlier I said find what works for you because there have been some clients where, yes, so there have been some clients where they may start off with that punching bag, right? They punch the bag, they get the anger out, get that energy out, or punch a pillow. And then when they're in an actual situation, they want something to punch, right? And they don't have those healthy outlets. So I've had people punch walls in the hole because they did not have that punching bag with them at the time. I've had individuals actually punch the person that they were having an altercation with. So in my practice, one of the things that I prefer to focus on is what are some other ways that we can also let that anger out? What are some other ways we can help you to relax without punching, okay? So that is how I approach it. But it's not wrong. It works for a lot of people. As long as you're able to contain yourself when you're in an actual stressful situation with someone and the punching bag is not there, right? For some people, they end up punching them. So I focus on other techniques as well. Okay? All right.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
My concern is about the deep breathing.
Yes.
And my question is, why sometimes on mornings, when I try to do deep breathing, I see as though my head spin, and I see black, I feel dizzy. What could be the
So,
cause?
yes, very good question. Can you just tell me a little bit about how you do the deep breathing?
I inhale my nose, and I breathe out through my mouth. Sometimes when I do that, I see black, and I feel my head spinning.
Yes. So there may be several reasons. Thank you so much for that question. That's excellent. For some people, if they're not breathing deep enough, so that's why I had you have to see that blow up like a balloon. So if you're still breathing shallow, then it can induce some of those symptoms. For some people, it could be something else. And so you just want to rule out that the breathing is not inducing or exacerbating some of the symptoms that are already there. But generally speaking, deep breathing should relax you if you're doing it deep enough. If it's too shallow, then it can cause the dizziness and some other things. So what I would encourage you to do is practice with your hands and make sure that the hand on your stomach is rising higher than the one on your chest. So that's how you're going to know that you're breathing deep enough. Okay? Thank you. Good evening.
I have an auntie that I believe she have depression and she's indoors for it's about a year now. She don't want to go out. She don't want to go anywhere. How can I help her to leave the house? Because every time I will go to her, she will tell me, okay, but by the time I reach, she will tell me, no, she's not going again. She's not feeling. So I want to know how I can help her to leave the house.
Excellent. And thank you so much for wanting to support your aunt. it can seem very overwhelming to take those huge steps. So from being very isolated to then, simply going out. So what I would suggest is taking baby steps. So what are some things you can do to interact with her in the home? Start there first. Whether it's a board game, whether it's listening to music, whether it's just talking and laughing. I cannot tell you how much the little things mean so much. So I had a similar client who was just homebound for a long time. And something that I had the family begin to do is in the morning, just open up the blinds. Open up the blinds. Let some sunlight come in. And we know sunlight is healing as well, right? But if they're in a dark room all the time, it makes the depression and the anxiety even worse. So our first step was, she's not getting out of the bed, but we're going in and we're opening up the blinds, let the sunlight come in. And then we took those little steps, hanging out with her in the bedroom, laughing, whatever would work for your aunt. And then you eventually progress into coming out in the living room and sitting and talking with you. And then eventually going in a car ride and just driving. So instead of, walking around in crowds, she's in the car with you and the two of you are just driving, but you're getting her out of the home. And then eventually you can work your way to going out, sitting, having dinner, having lunch, whatever the case is. But you have to take baby steps because moving from being isolated to then going outside of the home is huge. You see the things that we take for granted? It is huge. So you may be asking her to do things that she doesn't have the capacity to do right now. But taking those baby steps will increase the chances of her being able to do that. And if it has gotten to that level, also encouraging her to speak with a counselor, right? Because it may be difficult for her to process and to get through what she's going through on her own. But a licensed professional will be able to help her with that as well. And maybe volunteering to go to her appointments with her, that might help as well, okay? I will leave my cards, and if you need to brainstorm some more ideas, I'm happy to do that with you as well. Okay?
Yeah. I want to say that I have learned a lot here tonight. I am this person who always communicates with young people. And it so happened that a lot of young people, especially we have the Barbados Secondary School, and some of the girls who would walk down the road, well, let me not say they are my friends, but then we speak very well. And some of them do confide in me, where they would come to me and they would tell me a lot of things, which is confidential. And one of the things that I would hear from some of them, or even other people whom I do interact with, is I am so stressed out. It's like they're stressed and they're stressed. And then what I tend to do is to listen carefully before I comment.
Yes.
And after I have listened to them and pick, sense out of what is being said to me, even whilst listening, in my mind, I will seek God for wisdom to give a good answer. And then, I would, give an answer to some of them and try, my utmost best to see that at the end of the conversation that they feel better than before we started talking. But listening to about how they can take the deep breath, I think it is something I'm going to add you know, especially depending on what I hear, that I can tell them. Because even presently, I have a close friend of mine whose son passed away the week gone. And when I call to speak with her every morning or so, the first thing is, I am stressed, anxiety, and I do not know what to do. So, you know, I think I'm going to put what I have learned here into practice, and I pray that it helps with the problem. But a question I want to ask is, does stress lead to anxiety?
And thank you so much for sharing and being a safe space for so many. I used to be a teacher at Babono Secondary School, so that school holds a dear place in my heart. A lot of people come into therapy because they just need to feel seen and they need to feel heard. Because most people in their lives are so dismissive. Why is that bothering you? Why are you taking so long to get better? Why are you always in bed? Many people do not take the time to understand and to be truly supportive. So many of them come into therapy and they just want to feel seen and they want to feel heard. So if you can be that safe space for someone, right, I think it's more important to be able to listen non-judgmentally than to have all those brilliant solutions, okay? Just giving them that safe space to talk about what they're experiencing and letting them know that you're not judging, you're trying to understand what's going on with them, okay? It's probably my age, but I forgot your question. Oh yes, does stress lead to anxiety? Yes. Unmanaged stress can lead to anxiety. It can lead to depression. It can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder. It can lead to chronic pain. It can lead to a host heart disease, a host of different conditions. And anxiety is a very common one. So another reason why it's important to understand what are my warning signs and how can I activate my self-care plan. And I encourage everybody to develop a self-care plan, share it with someone so they can help you to be accountable, an accountability buddy. So when you talk about, I feel so stressed, you have somebody who knows, well, you said you would play football twice a week. When was the last time you did that? What is your nutrition like? And I'm speaking to myself too. Because when I get stressed, I love all the sweet stuff, which doesn't necessarily help, right? So developing a self-care plan and sharing it with someone who can keep you accountable so it does not continue to escalate to the point where it can lead to high levels of anxiety, depression, or any of the others. Okay?
Yeah, Dr. Greenidge. Two things. I just want to say that in another session, someone asked the same question about the deep breathing. And the suggestion was that do not wait when you get stressed
That's right. Yeah.
to do the deep breathing. In fact, he suggested that before you get out of your bed in the morning, lie flat on your back, get that pillow out of the way, and take at least 10 deep breaths, just like you said. Breathe into your stomach, through your nostrils. Right now my nostrils are blocked, so I can't breathe in through my nostrils. I have to breathe in through my mouth. Sinus is making a mess with me. So and then breathe out through your mouth very slowly. In fact, doing some theatrical exercises at school myself, we had, those of us in that class, had to breathe out through a straw. So that slows down because doing theatrics, you have to be able to hold in a lot of air. Sometimes your line is such that you can't just breathe in between and stuff like that. So we actually had to breathe out through a straw. Breathe in through our nostrils and breathe out through a straw. So it takes a little while to get that breath out. That's one of the things. Before you get up in the morning, lie flat on your back, take those, at least 10 of those deep breaths. Don't wait when that stress actually conquers you to try to think you can work a magic on it. There's no magic to that. The other thing is, one thing we must bear in mind, it is easy to say we can help somebody get rid of the stress. Let's not fool ourselves. People who are housebound, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen within a week. So we must be prepared if we want to help these people, that we are prepared to have the patience that it takes to deal with that situation in as long as it takes. Like you were saying, starting in the bedroom, it may take you months in that bedroom before you can get that person to the sitting room. And then when you get to that sitting room, before you get to the balcony where people begin to say hello to them, it takes another set of time. And then to get that person to ride that vehicle is another stress factor in itself. So let's not think that it's magic. It's not. I would like to say that in many instances, it is best if we refer those individuals to a professional. Let's not try to think we become professionals after one lecture. We are not professionals. We have an idea of what to look for, how to identify certain things, certain disorders from the reactions we see and the things that we hear. But it is a lot better sometimes, depending on the case, to refer these individuals to a professional. Okay? I just wanted to highlight those two areas.
I have two questions. Let me just respond to what was just shared. So, yes, as I said, you want to do the deep breathing in the morning. I also said you want to do it at some point throughout your day and then last thing at night, okay? That is really effective when it comes to calming the nervous system. I talked about the work that I do is rewiring the brain, and rewiring the brain, some of the foundational stuff we do is calming the nervous system. So doing the deep breathing at intervals throughout the day really, really helps. When caring and supporting someone with high levels of anxiety, everything that we spoke about everything that we spoke about this evening will assist the individual with eventually getting to that place where they're able to see a professional. One of the reasons why I spent a lot of time highlighting the words that hurt and the things that are not helpful, it's because especially in our society, a lot of individuals are not initially open to seeing a professional counselor. And in those interim moments, what are some things and some ways that I can be of support to the individual while I encourage him or her to see a counselor, okay? I think you raised a really good point of being patient as we do that. And we have to take care of ourselves as we support and take care of other people. So, not neglecting yourself in the process and also ensuring that you're prioritizing your self care.
Testing. Testing.
One question.
Not necessarily. Sometimes it could be they're not breathing deep enough. And sometimes it could be that the anxiety is so overwhelming that in that moment, the deep breathing is not sufficient. Okay? So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing something wrong. It may mean that we need to use other strategies to assist them.
Persons around them do not understand. Well, how would you advise that person?
Very good question, and we see it a lot. So, self care, on one of the slides I had, self care isn't selfish, it's self preservation. And sometimes we have to explain to our loved ones and our families the reasons why we're engaging and prioritizing different self care activities, the reasons why you're seeking additional support with home responsibilities or other things of the sort. You also have to recognize when individuals are just not going to be supportive, but you continue to prioritize what's best for you as well. Because I would love to say that after explaining why you're doing what you're doing, how the stress is affecting you, and why you need to rest and why you need to do certain things, I would love to say that everybody would get on board, but from my experience, it doesn't always happen that way. But the individual has to continue to forge forward with what is in their best interest and what is best for their well-being, okay? So being able to say no, reducing those people-pleasing behaviors where we prioritize everybody else except our own. We're keeping the peace with everybody, but there's a war brewing inside of us. So getting to that point where we understand why have we put ourselves on the back burner for so long, and what are some ways that we're going to make positive changes in order to take care of ourselves. So unfortunately, sometimes it means moving forward without the support and understanding of those around you.
In our St. Lucian public or society, I realize, or I think all of us realize that before anything, people are being thrown into wellness center. Your child have an issue, maybe just once, and tomorrow morning that child is at the wellness center. Yes, mental wellness center, yes. Is there an institution in St. Lucia, and I'm speaking about a free institution apart from the mental wellness center, that when something like that happens, that this person can get help? And my reason for using the word free is because sometimes this person is your neighbor. And of course, you are willing to help. But taking this person to a counselor, we know it's going to cost some monies. And we know these days, most of us don't have enough for ourselves. So we may not have enough to take that person to 3 or 4 sessions. So is there a free institution where we could take that person to? And my number 2 question is, do you believe that we have many people in St. Lucia, especially young people, who are misdiagnosed and thrown into wellness center, and all they need is probably some much needed counseling?
2 excellent questions. And I know we're streaming, but I'm going to be authentic, okay? I have a lot of issues with the wellness center, mental wellness center. I think a lot of individuals who are sent to the mental wellness center are not receiving the rehabilitative services that they need. In terms of free institutions, if we can go back 1 slide, let's see. So what immediately came to mind, again, yes, the St. Lucia Crisis Center, they offer free counseling services, in person or virtually, okay? So that is one of the options that I know. I know the Wellness Center offers counseling at reduced cost as well, but it's not free. And you're absolutely correct. I think we need better services for individuals who need more intensive mental health services. That currently does not exist. I have a host of different issues with what is currently being offered, but trying to do my part with the limited, trying to do my part where I can, okay? So the St. Lucia Crisis Center is what I would recommend right now until we have some other options that are available. But that is the only one, as well as the 24-hour hotline, the 203. But for counseling sessions, I would recommend the Crisis Center. Now, there are also some counselors who may offer pro bono services. So, for instance, in my practice, I reserve about 7 slots where they're all pro bono sessions. So I would not discount the other counselors. You can call and find out if they're willing or if they do have pro bono slots open to assist the individual, okay? With regards to the second question, yes, and it's not just in St. Lucia. I saw it a lot in the US as well, where there are lots of individuals, especially children, who are misdiagnosed. And it has some serious repercussions. So to give you an example, I worked with, the child was about 7 or 8 years old, and the mom brought him in and said he has ADHD, because you know the internet is available for everybody. Everybody goes online. She came in with a diagnosis, said, my child has ADHD. And basically what she wanted was the stamp of approval so she can get the benefits and she can get medication and whatnot. So I did my assessment and I noticed that the child did not have ADHD. And instead, I wanted to work with mom to give her some parenting techniques to assist the child. Well, she was most offended because she had already identified the child as the problem, and so did not want to do the parenting with me. So she withdrew her child out of therapy, and I kid you not, about probably 2 months later, came into my office in the US at the time, and came in with the child. I went into the lobby and I saw the child sitting there like a zombie. He could barely move, barely talk. He was heavily medicated. And the mom said to me, see, I have a perfect child now. So it happens not just in St. Lucia, but from my experience in the US as well. We have a lot of doctors, a lot of psychiatrists who are very thorough, but then we also have those instances where people go online, they self-diagnose, and they simply go into the doctors for the medication. A child who is taking ADHD medication who does not have the disorder can have some serious side effects to the brain because the medication changes the brain. And if you don't have ADHD, then it can cause some serious harm. So I agree. I wish everybody was thorough, but it doesn't always happen. And some individuals, like I said, through psychotherapy, they can see a reduction in the symptoms and they can go on to live very fulfilling and functional lives. Right? So unfortunately, yes, it happens. And this is where I always recommend seeking second opinions if you can. Okay? So not just. Now, there are times I have to give this disclaimer where an individual would need to go to the mental wellness center. Unfortunately, it's the only option that we have for inpatient psychiatric services. So if an individual is a danger to themselves or a danger to somebody else, there's nobody to supervise them, and the client says, when I leave here, I am going to, and give me detailed specifics on how they're going to end their lives or how they're going to harm somebody else. If that individual does not have someone to monitor them and to ensure that doesn't happen, unfortunately, the only option we have is the mental wellness center. But it's not always the best option for everybody and all the mental health struggles that we see from individuals. So 2 excellent questions. I wish there was more that I can do, but like I said, I try to do my part with the resources that I have and with individuals who are willing to listen, because some professionals who are put in those positions, they're not open to hearing what can be improved and how you can improve things. So those who are open, I'm happy to do my best to share my opinions and recommendations as well.
Yeah, my question is in 2 parts. Will you say that a person can always know, or they can always tell when they are being stressed, when they are stressed out? And in another sense, some people will not see that they are stressed out, but then you will notice that they always speak to themselves, especially when they are going through, something. They speak to themselves. They just keep speaking to themselves. So in that sense, are you saying, well, they are being stressed, they're under stress? And like the first question is, will you always say that, even if they don't say that I'm stressed, but continue?
Right, thank you. So I think there are always warning signs that tell us that we are stressed or we're getting to the place where anxiety is getting too high. But what often happens is that we are not used to paying attention to those signs and signals that our body sends us, okay? So what initially happens, we have the warning signs, we don't pay attention, then the body starts to scream, and that's where we have all the pain, we have the depression, we still don't listen, then eventually the body shuts down. And I'll give you an example using my experience. I mentioned earlier that a couple years ago I woke up in an ambulance. Were there warning signs? Absolutely. But I ignored them. And I continued to work and overwork until one day I fainted. I collapsed, right? When I got to the hospital, found out that my blood pressure was sky high. Never stopped long enough to notice those warning signs that my body was sending me, and so it began to scream and then shut down. So I think getting into the habit, and if you begin implementing those mindfulness activities and those relaxation activities, then you're better able to spot when there's a sign, a signal being sent to you that something is off. I share with everybody that emotions carry messages. All emotions are valid. Anger, rage, sadness, excitement, all emotions are valid. And all emotions carry messages. But we often don't sit long enough to find out what those messages are. And sometimes it could be the body is tired and you need to take a break, whatever that is, going to the beach, whatever it is. So we need to get into the habit where we're paying attention to our bodies to the point where we can recognize those warning signs that we initially get about stress. I said earlier, some people get really irritable. And if you're not there yet where you can recognize it, maybe, fortunately, you may have individuals around you who may pinpoint certain things to you. Your temper becomes very short. You're very impatient, very irritable, not sleeping well all of a sudden. There are always warning signs. And so my charge to everybody here this evening and those watching online is to get into the habit of practicing mindfulness and relaxation so we're more attuned to what's going on within our bodies so we can be proactive and take the necessary measures. An individual speaking to themselves, and this is not typical for the individual, you just notice it started happening, or is it something that happens all the time? It just started happening. Okay, so whenever something happens to upset them, you see those signs. So again, there are several reasons why that may happen. And stress could definitely be one of them. If you're noticing that there's a correlation between when there are stressors and when they do this behavior. But again, a licensed mental health professional will be able to do the assessment to determine exactly what is going on and also to give some coping skills to assist with reducing the stress and being more proactive rather than reactive when that happens. Okay? So I wish I could tell you this is what's going on, but unless I assess the individual, I'm not able to specifically say that it's X, Y, or Z. Okay?
Okay, good night. We have an online question.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Greenidge, would you agree that stress is contagious as well?
That's a good one. It can be. It can be. Have you ever heard individuals say when they start to take care of themselves, they have to avoid certain people? Whether those people are always very negative or they're always stressed out, and then you start to feel some of the very same things. So energy is contagious, and we have to pay attention to the energy that we surround ourselves with and how that energy is impacting us. So excellent question. If you're always around individuals who are always stressed, you try to be supportive, you recommended a mental health professional, they're not taking the recommendations, you now have to be really mindful about how that stress is affecting you and activate your self-care plans to take care of yourself, okay? With managing stress, we also have to identify what are the stressors. And sometimes the stressors are the people that we associate with. And taking the necessary measures. We do not always have control over who we associate with, especially in the workplace sometimes. But what are some boundaries that you need to establish so that you do not take on the stress of other people, even when trying to be supportive? Energy doesn't lie, and energy is contagious.
Okay, I think my question will probably be the last time. Looking around, okay, we have one more after this one. Dr. Greenidge, based on my bout with anxiety, I know a little about it. I would call it a little, but one question I was asked by several individuals during my period of anxiety is, how did you get that? How did you get that thing? Or where did you get that thing from? As time went by, I think I recognized, based on what was said to me, that I had health anxiety. How would you explain health anxiety? I know you've been generalizing tonight, you're just passing through, but there are different kinds of anxiety. How would you explain health anxiety? Because I suspect it's one of the very common ones nowadays.
All right, great question. So health anxiety would be where an individual is constantly worrying about contracting a certain illness or falling ill or getting sick. Now, there are several reasons for that. It could be somebody close to you fell sick, somebody died from a certain illness, and so you now become very hypervigilant, always scanning your body, for evidence that you're also getting sick. Now, with many individuals, they're able to quickly recognize, oh my goodness, this is what I'm doing, and then take the steps to stop it. But then there are individuals where it continues to persist, especially if you do not get the help that you need. It can continue to persist, and it worsens over time. I have one client, she was ill, very, very ill, spent a lot of time at the hospital, doing well now, no longer have those symptoms, but she has the health anxiety because she's always fearful that she will get sick again, okay? And that can lead individuals to remaining isolated, a lot of avoidance behaviors, trying to prevent themselves from getting sick. So it could be something you experience, or it could be something you notice somebody close to you experience as well. And so now you're terrified of having the same illness. So you may have a headache, and you know somebody who had a brain tumor, and so all of a sudden you have a brain tumor as well through the headache, right? And you go from one doctor to the next looking for someone to validate that, yes, it's a brain tumor, when it's simply a headache or a migraine. So that's just one example. And again, talking about it, it may seem like, but why would they do that? But remember, certain changes in the brain also happen that may solidify the threat that the body is sensing, and the body continues to pump the individual with adrenaline, with cortisol, and that just keeps the anxiety rising and rising. And unless they get professional help when it gets to that level, it just worsens over time to the point where you see individuals unable to leave home because it has gotten so bad, okay? But the key here is to recognize, just as any of the physical illnesses, that is also a serious medical condition that requires professional help. Okay?
Dr. Greenidge, dealing with counselors is still taboo in our country, right? Because when people, if you say you're going to a counselor, they sometimes think you're mad. What is being done to bring that under, well, proper knowledge? That's one question. Came across a young man last week and he told me he's angry. Who can I lead him to? Yes, we prayed and, I did what the Christian thing to do. But I know he has an issue. Is the crisis center the place that I could direct him, or is there a place where I can send him to deal with maybe his anger? And finally, the Christian family is under stress. And sometimes we don't talk about it. But it is a real thing that is causing difficulties in marriages. And one of the things that I have come across is that in my profession, you find that there are lots of officers who, to deal with the stress, go to alcohol or to have a side chick to cope with their situations. It's their environment. I know we have our pastors and we have our learned leaders. Are there recommended persons within the Christian realm that one can recommend for such intervention? Thank you.
Very good. Okay, let's see if I remember all three. Try to write. So the stigma, yes, unfortunately the stigma still persists, and a lot of individuals still have a negative perception of seeking professional counseling, and so they avoid it. What is being done? I can speak about what I am doing. So sessions like this, I have gone to Adventist churches, I have gone to the community, different communities, just educating individuals on mental health, mental illness, and different mental health topics to normalize things. So that's one of the things that I do. I liaise with a lot of the medical doctors on the island because, as we know, a lot of individuals would quicker go to the doctor to complain about the headaches, not eating, not sleeping, as opposed to going to a counselor to address the underlying reasons. So I liaise with a lot of medical doctors, and so we now collaborate. So they refer a lot of their patients to me when they've recognized the tests are negative, and so it must be a psychological issue. And it wasn't always easy because sometimes it takes convincing even the medical professionals that the mental health work is important. But that is something that I prioritized, and I'm happy to say that I have a lot of medical doctors who refer their patients to me now. A couple years ago, I would never dream of the response that I'm currently getting with regards to individuals who are open to counseling. I also have a lot of men as clients, and that is something you would not typically see before. So I'm seeing a shift. We still have some ways to go, but I'm seeing a shift and some more positive attitudes towards counseling. I would encourage those of you attended this presentation this evening, warms my heart. I remember doing a presentation at a church which will remain unnamed, and half the congregation walked out, and it was also about anxiety. So the fact that you're here, the fact that you want to learn, you're receptive, you're open to understanding it more, I think that is so heartwarming for me. And so you share that information with others as well. So you can also do your part in your little corners of the world to educate and to normalize. I always talk about my experiences with my own counselor. And I'll just say this here, if your counselor does not have a counselor, that's a problem. Why would I expect individuals to come to me and I'm not open to seeing a counselor myself? So I couldn't navigate my grief on my own. In the US, I endured a lot of racism and discrimination. I needed professional help to assist with that. So normalizing those experiences when we do have those discussions in the workplace, when you hear individuals using those phrases and those terms that are hurtful, speaking up and educating individuals on why it's harmful. It's something else that can be done to reduce the stigma. When I see, so the Ministry of Health, they have their promotions and health fairs all the time. And I would see the flyers when I just moved back to St. Lucia. And I've contacted a couple people and said, but you're having a health fair, and there's nothing mental health being offered. There's no health without mental health. Physical health affects mental health affects physical health. And so I'm pleased to report I do see a difference. The last couple of flyers I saw, there were mental health screenings and different mental health. So we all have a part to play in reducing the stigma towards mental health and seeking professional counseling. The anger, so the individual you spoke with who is struggling with anger, I recommend working with a professional counselor. So if the individual is unable financially to work with a professional counselor, in the community, the Crisis Center has free services as well, but also contacting the other counselors to see whether they do have pro bono slots. Even some of the psychiatrists have pro bono slots as well. So that is something that you can do. Anger is typically a secondary response. So you see the anger, but there's always an underlying reason, right? And when we talk about depression, when women are typically depressed, we're sad, we're tearful. When men are typically depressed, they get very angry. And so I would recommend working with a professional counselor. And the Christian family, counseling as well. I'm currently working with some couples. I have one family as well. And I know they've tried everything, but they just needed that unbiased, objective person who is trained in family counseling, trained in mental health, who can assist them, right? So that goes hand in hand with reducing the stigma. If a Christian family feels they're under attack, feels that there's a lot of stress that needs to be addressed, are they open to going to speaking with a counselor, right? I know a lot of the pastors and religious ministers, they do offer some kind of counseling as well, which can be extremely helpful. But not everybody wants to go that route, and some individuals need more than that as well. And that's totally okay. That is totally okay. So I would recommend finding a counselor that works for you, for your schedules. These days, we also have online counselors. So even counselors in the US who offer online services, you can take advantage of those services right here in St. Lucia, virtually. Okay? All right. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure speaking with you tonight, and I hope this was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Greenidge. Let me just echo your sentiments in saying that I'm pleased to see that Christians turned out to be a part of this lecture, not just from Mount Sinai, but a few from other churches, and I think I have one, two from the community as well. Very, very encouraging, and I would love to see the day when we'll probably have this on a larger scale for our Christian churches, because I have to say that being ill with anxiety taught me lots of lessons, and it exposed the fact that as Christians, I think we have it all wrong as it relates to mental illness, mental health, and especially anxiety. We hear anxiety and we think that is something for somebody who is not a Christian. Because I was told that, yes, something has to be wrong with me. If you're a Christian and you have anxiety, something is wrong. You just need to speak to God or increase your faith and you'll be okay. But let me say, as a pastor, if you're struggling with mental health, don't come to me. I can counsel in other areas, but I needed counseling for myself when I had mental health, so I really cannot assist in that department. Just as we would go to a doctor if we have a broken leg, they are professionals if we are struggling with mental health. And so that is where we have to go. I'm glad I went to Dr. Greenidge during my period of illness, and we had some very interesting, very informative, very eye-opening sessions, and that's probably one of the reasons I can stand here today and speak to you. So I have to just publicly thank her for that again. But believers, we need to, as Christians, exercise wisdom. It's not all about just having faith in God. If we have faith in God for mental health, we have to have it for cancer as well, as you alluded to. We go to doctors, medical doctors, when we have other illnesses. When you are struggling with a mental health issue, you need to find the persons who are trained in that department. And I long for the day when our Christian churches will understand that and not think that if a pastor has anxiety, it means something is wrong in his life. We need to understand that, and the quicker we can get that message out there to other Christians, other churches, the better for us, because we'll be able to deal with the problems that our Christians are going through and refer them to the right individual. So thank you again, Dr. Greenidge. This is not official, but I'm glad that you came here tonight to share this very important lecture with us. As you indicated, the plan is for us to, going forward, not this year, the year is almost ended, lots of things happening in the month of December, but when the new year opens, God willing, we will be continuing, and you'll be able to go into details or specify in some areas which I think would be very helpful to us as Christians. So we really appreciated the fact that you came here tonight. So believers, if you need to speak to a professional, spare counseling and consulting services in Rodney Bay, that's the place to go to see Dr. Greenidge. That's where I went, and I got some very good assistance, and I would encourage that you go there as well. Now, she didn't ask me to put in a plug for her. I'm just saying that because I experienced it firsthand. But I could identify with so much of what she said tonight, believers. I just sat there and I was smiling. I know my wife was probably smiling as well, because almost everything that she was saying, I went through that. I know what it feels like. I know the struggles. I know the talk about people saying, just get up and go, head to church. I went through that. So I can identify with it. So rest assured, as time goes by, we'll be getting a lot more information that we can put into good use, all for the honor and glory of God. As we prepare to close off officially, I will call on Sister Shade to come at this time just to say an official thanks to our presenter for tonight.
Church. On behalf of Mount Sinai Baptist Church, I want to express our deepest gratitude to you, Dr. Greenidge, for taking the time to join us today and share such a meaningful and impactful lecture. We are inspired by the knowledge you've shared and will most definitely be putting it into action. We also say a big thank you to your sister for providing her assistance tonight. Thank you once again for your dedication, your kindness, and the wisdom you have shared with us. May God continue to guide and strengthen you, using your knowledge to inspire and uplift all those you encounter. Looking forward to hearing from you again.
I was just thinking, she said thanks to 2 individuals and we have 1 fruit basket, but I'm sure they're going to share. I'm sure she will get from it. She may very well get more than Dr. Greenidge. Thank you very much for being here. It was a joy having you, and of course, this in no way, indicates how much we appreciate the time that you spent with us, but we just look forward to having you again, and as time goes by, I'm sure a lot more individuals, Christians will come on board, and that very important information will go out there so that all could hear. So let's put our hands together again for Dr. Wendy Greenidge, professional psychotherapist, for delivering this very important lecture. Please join me in standing as we close off in prayer tonight. Ask Deacon Williams to come and officially bring the session to a close as we leave this place.
Thank you, Pastor. Believers, we had a wonderful day in the house of the Lord, spiritual food in the morning and a well-deserved meal this evening. I must call it a meal because at the end of it all, what we are learning here can go a long way in aiding us in dealing and coping with our day-to-day lives. Dr. Greenidge, on behalf of Mount Sinai again, let us. Thank you, dear Father, for your daughter. Dear Father, who took time from a busy schedule to be with God's people, oh Heavenly Father, to impact knowledge. Father, I pray for your blessings and guidance over her. Indeed, oh Heavenly Father, we are blessed tonight. And we are thankful, dear Lord, for the knowledge that was given. Father, I pray, oh Lord God, that we, oh Heavenly Father, would not just hear it, but Lord, would learn from it, would put it into practice. And dear Father, we want to thank you for individuals like Dr. Greenidge. And we pray, oh Lord God, for her colleagues, dear Father, who have to deal with those situations on a day-to-day basis. And I know, Father, it is difficult. But I pray that, Lord, you would give them strength, you would give them courage, dear Father, to continue the work that they are doing. Father, in the name of Jesus, I thank you for what transpired in your house this morning and this evening. I pray, oh Heavenly Father, as we make our way to our various homes, you would grant us traveling mercies, and you would be with us again when these doors are open, to give you the praise and glory that you rightfully deserve. So, Father, I pray for your blessings and your guidance. We place everything into your hands. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. Get home safely. We are dismissed.